Buenas tardes, good evening, and welcome back to the Manchester and Leeds Instituto Cervantes YouTube channel. Today, I am very honored to present this event entitled Spain and the UK, a television dialogue between La Movida and Peak TV. As part of the 7th edition of our series Hispanglia, The Traces of Spain in the United Kingdom, a series which is now coordinated by Professor Duncan Wheeler, who will discuss with Dr. Concepción Cascajosa, our special guest. First of all, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to you, Duncan and Concepción, to whom we are very grateful for accepting the invitation to participate in this discussion that will go around the cultural dialogue through television between Spain and the United Kingdom over the last 40 years. One extraordinary aspect of television is its ability to overcome reality. If seeing is believing, then there is always a troubling doubt until you have seen it on television. Back in the 60s, there were only a few television channels in both countries. In Spain, only 2 and 3, if don't mistake me, in the United Kingdom. Today, with satellite and digital technology, there are hundreds available from around the world. That diversity has inevitably led to a certain amount of fragmentation and has completely transformed the cultural interaction between Spain and the United Kingdom. British series as Upstairs, Downstairs remain an icon of prestige and quality in Spain. The British counterculture also sneaked onto the screen as a synonym for creative freedom. In the musical programs such as La Edad de Oro and fiction such as The Young Ones. More recently, during the golden age of serialized fiction known as Peak TV, Spain series as Locked Up or Elite are gaining popularity in the United Kingdom. Well, during this dialogue tonight, our guests will discuss and review the different aspects of this relationship between Spain and the United Kingdom through television, and what they say, what are the consequences of this cultural evolution in both countries. But before I pass the floor to Duncan, I will give some very brief biographical notes on our guest. Concepción Cascajosa Virino is a senior lecturer of television studies and head of the Department of Communication at the Universidad Carlos III of Madrid. She is author of several academic publications about the Spanish TV drama industry, including articles in journals such as Hispanic Research Journal, Feminist Media Studies, Television and New Media, and Catalan Journal of Communication and Cultural Studies. Since 2021, she has served on the board of directors of Radio Televisión Española as a non-executive member and writes a monthly column in Fotogramas, which is the leading magazine in Spain about television fiction. The coordinator of the series, Duncan Wheeler, holds a BA and PhD from the Oxford University and is a professor of Hispanic Studies at the University of Leeds. He's editor of the Journal of Modern Language Review and a member of the Spanish Academy of Performing Arts. He has been visiting professor at the University of Carlos III in Madrid, Oxford, and UCLA. His publications include Golden Age Drama in Contemporary Spain, The Comedia on Page, Stage and Screen, and Following Franco, Spanish Culture and Politics in Transition. Duncan writes for the media both in Spain and the United Kingdom and has published articles on politics and culture in The Economist, The Guardian, Joe Down, the London Review of Books, the Literary Supplement, etc. After the debate, as usual, we will have 15 minutes for the audience to put your questions. You are very welcome to put them in our chat, And without further ado, I give the floor to Professor Duncan Wheeler. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Pedro, and thank you everyone for coming. I mean, I was just going to start off by just very briefly giving a bit of the rationale of what we're going to be listening to, or the conversation we're going to be having this evening, and why Conchi, why this conversation of television. Basically, I was very grateful to Pedro and to Cervantes to suggest that I coordinate this series. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to think about subjects and people that would have an appeal, would have hopefully a broad appeal to the people here, but also things from which I'm a terrible parasite in this, and I always want to learn from whatever I'm doing. And actually, if any of the publications I've had on Spanish culture and politics have any merit, a lot of it's to do with the people that I choose to speak to when I'm in Spain. And well, for over a decade now, Conchi's been one of the people with whom I've always, when I've gone over to Madrid, spent time with, spoken to, run past ideas, and sometimes, she said, "You're onto something here," and sometimes she said, "No, that doesn't work because of A, B, and C." So she's really somebody who, whose opinion I trust in that, and she's got a very curious mind in lots of different ambits, but the area in which she's really established herself as, well, a world expert is in television. And I think one thing, I mean, there's two things I'd highlight about her trajectory up to now in this regard, or two things which I think sum it up. One which would be is, I mean, if you go to a film festival or a festival of television series, there's honestly no access, all access is passed, but will get you to more places and to meet more people than to say you're friends with Conchi, but also to come with a recommendation of hers. And I think that beyond the kind of anecdotal value of that sums up that what she's managed to achieve very impressively, and I think it's testament to both her personal and professional qualities, that often people working in the industry, kind of accuse academics of being, or people working in the university of being too distant from reality, and people working in academia sometimes criticize people working in the industry for having a lack of being short-term planning, for having a lack of historical context, etc. What not just Conchi, but actually just a prime example of a general culture they have in the Carlos III University in Madrid have done is really bring together, ever since Manuel Palacio established the Department of Audiovisual Communication there, is really establish a dialogue between cinema and then television practitioners and academics working on the subject, and scholars working. And Conchi's kind of very much at the moment has got her one foot in both the university and, as Pedro said, working on the board for on the board of the Spanish state television state broadcaster. So that's the preamble and the justification of, and the next, just a brief trailer for our next event. Our next event will be in November with Maria Delgado talking about film and theatre. But continuing on with today's, what I wanted to do is I've prepared some questions, and it's really what I prepared these questions thinking about is to tell a story, as the best television series, as many television series do, a story of both Spanish television and its relationship to television in the UK, and also mapping this onto the personal and professional biography of Conchi. So, to start with, I wanted to ask, when you were a child growing up in Andalusia, which is where Conchi was raised, there wasn't the range of channels that there are now on Spanish television, or in most televisions around the world. I wondered what your first televisual memories were, both as regards Spanish television programs and anything you might have seen from the from the UK.
Thank you, Duncan, and thank you for the the organization of this debate talk. Thank you for having me and all the the different presentations and the nice things that you said about me that I'm not really sure that I deserve your kind words, but in any case I will try to be up to the task today. To me is I'm curious about Duncan highlighting the fact that I grew up in Andalusia, because it's the case, but also I grew up in a really small town. I'm probably thinking about that time and reading the list of questions that Duncan sent me. It was like, going to, the memory lane, in that sense. And I think that my relationship with television is pretty much based on the situation that I didn't have access to cinema. I was not able to go to a film theater because the nearest place was like 100 kilometers. So to me, my relationship with media was mostly television, and also like the video club, the video store where we were able to get some films. So to me, television screen is like is really this this window to the world in that sense. So it was really a window to the world. Because as Duncan said, I'm a very curious person, and I don't think that I have a lot of good qualities, but I always say to my students that I think to be curious, to really have some like some interest in everything, to me is a good thing, and I think it's one of the qualities on which I think is based my career and also my life. So to me, television was window to the world, was a way for entertainment, and was a way to learn. So from that point of view, I have the very distinct memories from very early in my life, particularly watching television fiction. For example, I remember very clearly, and probably was my first television memory, Duncan, that it was the American television drama Lou Grant, that it was about a newspaper.
Yep.
And so ironically now I'm the head of that department of Department of Communication, so I'm not sure that this is a real relationship there. It was American drama. What is considered the second golden age of American television drama. Sun Elsewhere, of course, Hill Street Blues, Moonlighting, that kind of American television series. And from the point of view of my experience with British television, you need to understand that for we have like two distinct British from television.
Yeah.
One of them is comedy, mostly comedy, and particularly Benny Hill. Yeah, it was huge. It was very, very, popular in Spain, and particularly when one of the commercial channels started. So that's that relationship with comedy that it is most lipstick. So it's not very sophisticated comedy, so to speak. But at the same time, I also had the idea of drama. To me, the United Kingdom is television drama. If I show you my office here, I had a lot of books about the British television drama, and I tried to go to the United Kingdom and particularly to London for example, to go to the British Film Institute Radio Times Television Festival. I think I have been there in every festival. So to me, I see British television like television drama, and there I had the memory of watching, and this was a bit traumatic to me, and probably one of the biggest traumas that I have since I was a child. It was an episode of Doctor Who that it was broadcast in Canal Sur, which was the regional channel in Andalusia when I was growing up. And I remember an episode about plants trying to take over the world, and plants having being killers and having minds and feelings.
And that was more traumatic than Benny Hill.
Yeah, it was very traumatic to me because I was addicted to eating veggies. So I have it was to me a traumatic that experience of watching that particular episode of Doctor Who. And that's the reason that for many years I really rejected Doctor Who, and I became fan, a Doctor Who fan. But many years you know,
Later.
afterwards that. And even today, when I watch Doctor Who, I'm remembering once in a, you know, when a while, you know, that traumatic experience. So be careful with, if you have children, you know, with the kind of content, because you never know. Even Doctor Who can be traumatic for,
It was always the
for a
scary, you know,
person.
there was always the scary thing of, I mean, I didn't know, to be honest with you, I didn't know that Doctor Who had been screened in Spain, but it was always the thing about the scary ones for British children was always the Daleks, you know, the monsters.
Yeah.
I've never heard of the plants that came to life.
It wasn't one particular episode
just
that I remember very clearly.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, we've kind of touched on this slightly, but I mean, I guess irrespective of whether one likes the BBC or not, there can be no doubting that it's performed a kind of important role in Britain's cultural diplomacy as a form of what we now call soft power, to present the UK as the land of fair play and democracy. Although I'm not quite sure how Benny Hill fits in there. It's strange how international he's been. I remember when I went to Argentina, people there were telling me about Benny Hill as well. I mean, your colleague Manuel Palacio has discussed how the Spanish state broadcaster during the transition functioned as a democratizing tool. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about how and why the BBC was a point of reference. So in the period in the 70s, just after Franco died and Spain was becoming a democracy, and also from your position as a working with a state broadcaster now, if the BBC is still continues to be a point of reference.
Yeah, I think I see that you know two parts in your question. To me, one of the interesting things when we are thinking about the BBC in Spain is that we don't really know the difference between television or content coming from the BBC and content coming from ITV.
Right.
So if you play, you know, the melody of Thames Television, that it was part of the ITV system. You play that for an Spanish person, they're going to understand that that's related to BBC.
So it's the idea that the BBC is synonymous with British television, and
that's correct. So actually, sometimes it's difficult to understand from the point of view of Spain that some contents that we associate with the BBC is not from the BBC. It's from for commercial television. So here in Spain, I don't know how many research projects have been granted to discuss the relationship between television, public service television in Spain and the United Kingdom, even though they are totally 100% different systems.
No.
And I have the idea that we are, associating, BBC with British content. So when we're thinking, about some particular content, we are not sure. And also, we don't really have a direct experience of what is really, BBC, what is the real content that the BBC is broadcasting. So this is, to me, it's like an ongoing conversation that they have sometimes in Televisión Española about the idea that even though I think it's good to have, the BBC as a reference, we need to be careful because first, some content that we associate to the BBC is not BBC. It's commercial television, and the other way around. If we consider, for example, the case of Traitors, that is a reality format.
Yeah.
In Spain, we have our very our adaptation of Traitors on HBO. And to me, from the point of view of a television broadcaster, trying to sell Traitors as a public service television is very difficult to understand that.
Yeah.
But it is, and we know that actually is giving the BBC a lot of noise in social media, and it's also making a lot of young people to watch the BBC player. Okay, so
which they're under pressure to do because they're quite close to their tip, because in order they have to have a certain number of people accessing their content to justify the license fee. And
I understand that, but it's like the idea that like the BBC they can do that, but probably Televisión Española we cannot do that, because probably if we're thinking about some particular particularly factual format, probably we are associating that content with commercial television and not with public service television. And I can give you different examples about how some formats coming from the BBC, they were rejected a few years ago because of this problem. Okay, that is not, you know, public service television, but in the United Kingdom it is.
Yeah.
So to me, I think we have a problem because probably to us, from my point of view, we need to consider, you know, cultural, you know, frameworks similar to us.
Yeah.
And also, you know, television systems that they are more similar to the situation, you know, in Spain, because we know that the BBC, you know, the budget of the BBC is very big, is huge, and we cannot compete. And also, when we cannot compete with the budgets, we cannot compete with the ratings, and also we cannot compete with the, you know, with this, you know, acceptance to some particular, you know, contents. So I think that I'm not going to say that the prestige of the BBC is not real. It is, and probably it's a good idea for British people to defend, you know, the role of public service television, because public service television is under every time is under threat, and it's very easy to criticize, you know, public service television. But from a point of view, sometimes I see, you know, this way to compare everything that Televisión Española is doing with the BBC. It's like it's not first, because we don't have the same budget, we don't have
You're
the
not
same, you know,
competing in the
governance.
quality of
Yeah, the same governance model, but also because we don't really know what the BBC is, because we have like this idea that is very, you know, far away from our reality about what the BBC is. And I think it can be, you know, it can be bad for establishing like a project for a public service broadcaster in a country that is the case of Spain.
So in other words, to sum up, would you say that it's fair to say your answer is saying that it's fair enough that it's a reference point, but it shouldn't be the reference point?
That's correct.
And that, not, you know, certain things might be replicable, but the institution cannot just be replicated. You know, you can't just remove it from the UK context and place it in the Spanish context and expect it to work or be feasible.
Yeah, but but at the same time, I really admire how, you know, the BBC, you know, really build, you know, this notion of prestige, even though not all the programming is about prestige. But it's the same with HBO in the United States. When we think about you know, the HBO brand, we're thinking about The Sopranos, we're thinking about 6 Feet Under, we're thinking about, you know, really prestigious television drama. But we know that is not that's HBO, but HBO is also, you know, a channel about, I don't know, sports, boxing, and also reality programming and softcore porn. That's also HBO.
You know, the only BBC program, which actually I didn't actually appear in it, but I was the only BBC program I was close to appearing in was, but I wasn't fat enough, was Fat Nation, as a TV program, a documentary about my mum's street, which was one of the fattest in. It was meant to be a typical street full of fat people in Britain, and it was a kind of reality show about that, which probably doesn't fit with what people, you know, people's impressions in Spain of prestige BBC or high quality BBC content is. Anyway, to move us, just keep us, you know, in that period of the early years of democracy or post-Franco democracy in Spain, and thinking in terms of content as opposed to policy. The heady years of the Movida is often viewed internationally through the eyes of the films of Pedro Almodóvar. Television, historically at least, has been seen as a more domestic medium often. And one of the reasons that, say, Alaska, the pop singer, remains a multi-generational household name in Spain is because she was so often on television, be that as a guest on La Edad de Oro or presenting a children's television series, La Bola del Cristal. For those of you, anyone here not familiar with Alaska, she's kind of, you know, one of the biggest pop stars of the transition, who's managed to reinvent herself for multiple generations. To what extent, in terms of these programs of La Movida, kind of linked in with a kind of youth drug field movement, countercultural movement, to what extent were the reference points in UK television for these?
I'm really curious about this question with that, because probably you know more about this topic than me, but probably I can give you. I'm not really sure that is a direct connection in televisual terms, in the
Yeah.
sense of specific programs from the United Kingdom. What I think that is a direct connection with the idea of going to London.
Yeah.
To traveling to London from some, media professionals, to get a sense of what is happening in the world. So what I think is that for many years, for some people, of course, with some, money to be able to travel to London now, I know it's very cheap, but from the point of view of multiple generations of art critics, people from cinema, many many different professions associated with arts or broadcasting or film in some way, going to London to concerts, to buy recordings, to go into the cinema, or even going to a theater, was like a way to connect. And I remember discussing this thing with Javier Olivares, who is the creator of Ministerio del Tiempo. Javier Olivares, I think, is a very interesting figure from a point of view, because before becoming a screenwriter, he was an art critic for many, relevant magazines during the Movida period, including Madrid and many others. And to me, he told me in one personal interview that this was published in one academic article I wrote about el Ministerio del Tiempo. Going to London was the place, like we will say, we can say the place to be. Is the place to have a contact.
And it was
what's
a
happening
generational
in
shift,
cultural
because
terms.
for an earlier generation of Spaniards, people would be more actively against the Franco regime. It'd be more singer-songwriters, it'd be more Paris, and then suddenly Paris got replaced by Londoners.
Yeah, for sure, because I think probably was, of course, music was the key thing here, probably also art.
Yeah.
And I don't see television as a relevant force. I don't see people going to London to watch the BBC.
No.
I think it was more about having contact with what's happening in cultural terms, and I think that was the real influence on the type of programming that was made during the Movida period. That's my perception, and I remember a few days ago discussing, the situation of one person that it was going to retire, and it was, this person was going to London, once a year, and when he came back, the suitcase was full of recordings, and full of magazines, and full of everything that he was able to take with him, when coming back to the United from the United Kingdom to Spain. And I think that's the real link.
But the thing is, I mean, the reference point I've had of a couple of musicians and people working in television as well in Spain have told me is that, then again, it goes back to being slightly mythologized. But one of the things that they did notice when they came to London and actually to the US was that there was programs on the television dedicated to youth culture and to music. So that you'd come and you'd put on Thursday night, watching Top of the Pops would be an event. And there was a sense of, why can't we have that kind of event, a communal event for young people in Spain? And then, and this is also more, I think it's probably more the US actually rather than the UK. But a lot of the, I mean, with a lot of the musicians involved with La Movida, a lot of them were from quite well-off families who traveled. And a lot of them, I think Alaska talks about, she had the initial kind of bonding with her bandmates was the fact that they'd watched the Munsters. I mean, that's not a music television program, but they'd watched the Munsters when they'd been in the United States, and they had nobody to talk about it when they were back in Madrid. I mean, I do remember, and I think I guess it's not directly comparable to these programs, but I think it was you who told me once that the Young Ones, the youth comedy program in Spain from the UK, was briefly very popular in Spain around this time.
Yeah, because I had this idea of very, to be a very, avant-garde television.
Yeah.
And because we probably it's impossible to produce now the things that were produced, 25 or 30 years ago. But I have the idea that because I remember, some particular things about, about the representation of society, the representation of, the intergenerational, conflict, and also, the representation of, sex.
Yeah.
So I think that from the point of view of Spain, that was, I don't say that it was revolutionary, because it's a word that sometimes we use, probably too freely, but it was fresh. So from my point of view, I had the idea of that some particular content was fresh, was, it was free. You had the idea that it was possible to produce, that kind of things from for television, and that probably, and I was going to introduce another idea that is probably related to the experience of women.
Yeah.
Because for a generation of women, London, it was like a place associated to freedom, but also to control of their own bodies, because it was the place where women in Spain went to have an abortion. So discussing, this experience with women, of course, it's a bit 100% different from the experience of men. When you discuss, when was the first time that you went to the United Kingdom? Probably it was because I went to have an abortion, or I went to a friend who was having an abortion.
So it wasn't an experience you showed off about on social media.
Yeah, I know, I understand, but that's part of these, spoken things, and these, experiences that sometimes women we share with each other when we are discussing, things. But I had this idea that for a full generation of women, that's also the reason that the United Kingdom is associated, and London is associated with freedom.
Yeah.
Because it was a place to be able to, to be able to control their own, their own body, and and to perform, that situation that for them it was a way, to not to be forced to, marry, for example.
Yeah.
So I think that probably if we discussing, the role of some particular women during that period of La Movida, and the role of the representation of women, and I think probably this is like an unspoken, thing that needs to be taken into consideration.
No, I'm sure you're right. So it kind of all feeds into a collective imaginary, which television is perhaps just one or a small part. I mean, changing or broadening or developing the narrative slightly. I mean, I think someone made this point actually in the chat earlier. I mean, obviously, there was a point, and you talked about watching Doctor Who on Canal Sur, of a region of a channel of Andalusia. It was obviously over the course of the 1980s, different regional autonomies in Spain begin to have their own television channels, beginning with TV, in Catalonia. I seem to recall, I'm curious to know whether this is an urban legend or whether this is true. I remember being told that British soap opera EastEnders was a BBC soap opera, unlike ITV's Coronation Street, was dubbed into Catalan but not into Castilian. Is that correct? And am I also right in thinking that some nationalist pride was taken in the idea that Catalans could appreciate the British sense of humour in theories such as Blackadder or Monty Python more than perhaps other Spaniards?
I'm not really sure, because I also I don't have any memory about, this sender in Canal Sur. I think that they bought the content together, because the regional channels, they form like association to buy content. But I don't have a memory about, its enders. I have memory about other content. And I think that what happened is that in Spain, of course, in Andalusia, we speak in Spanish.
Yeah, Castilian.
But I had also the memory, because actually I was born in Catalonia, that some regional channels, and particularly, TV3, they use, soap operas, and television drama to try to introduce the use of Catalan. So it was like in a particular, form of soft power, no.
Yeah, because I think they used Dallas definitely was put
Dallas is like, it's
Dallas
like,
was the
yeah,
emblematic
that's a
one in
very
Catalonia.
well-known case. Probably in the, and we have here, Paul Julian Smith that probably can also, illuminate us about this. But this idea that they use, soap operas to introduce the use of, the Catalan language to the general, population, and they use, the regional channel to normalize the use of Catalan using soft power, in the sense that, they use the television drama. Probably, after a few years was also the basis for, for the Catalan, for some Catalan creators to develop, the daytime dramas in the, Catalan television, and particularly, Temps de Silenci, that also, it was also later also influential in the development of the daytime series in Spain. But in Andalusia, I don't have the memory of EastEnder, and I don't see the appeal of EastEnder for Andalusian people. Also because in Andalusia, in Canal Sur, they started to produce their own daytime dramas very fast.
Very fast, yeah.
Yeah. Also because Canal Sur arrived later than TV3 and ETV.
Yeah.
It was almost a decade, between, the arrival of the first generation, regional channels, and then, the arrival of Telemadrid and Canal Sur.
So I'll look into see. I was always something I was told when I by people about 10, 15 years ago about, I think it was Dave said it was called Gent del Barri. I'm sure, apologies for my awful Catalan, in Catalan, EastEnders, but I've never actually located an episode or know whether, as I say, it could just be an urban legend. But it's something I'll check up afterwards. And now I'm going to start being after being very biographical about Conchi, I'm going to be slightly autobiographical about myself before asking my next question, which is, when I think about my earliest audio-visual images of Spain, they come as well from television as opposed to cinema. I can still remember watching I can still remember as a 9-year-old watching a Madonna concert from Barcelona's Olympic Stadium. And actually, I should say I'm from Birmingham. People from Birmingham were very, very bitter because the year that Barcelona got the Olympic Games, Birmingham also bid for it. And I can still remember, with all seriousness, people saying, well, because Amsterdam, I think, also went for it, and people saying, what have Amsterdam and Barcelona got that Birmingham hasn't? Which perhaps it's best not to think about the answers to that one. But shortly after that Madonna concert, there was launch of the BBC's ill-fated El Dorado soap opera, which, for anyone not familiar with it, apparently it's been turned into a luxury hotel now. The set was a BBC drama about a group of expats from all over Europe living in just outside on the Costa del Sol. And more recently, we've had a comedy series like Benidorm. Now, Spaniards are often sharply attuned to how they're viewed from outside. My sense, however, is that television hasn't been high up on that regard, and that there isn't that much awareness in Spain, or people don't really know about these series like El Dorado or Benidorm. Am I right in that? And what do you think of any representations you've seen of Spain and Spaniards on British television?
I now I'm working. I'm the PhD, supervisor of one, creator from Balearic Island, and we are working on the representation of, the Balearic Island and different production. And we notice, the relevance of, that the representation Mallorca, for example, in British television. We have the idea that probably for and this is also for drama and probably also for reality formats, including Gandia Short, and that we have the idea that for probably for you Spain is mostly parties and Malaga, Mallorca, not a lot of Catalonia, I think, Costa Brava, but I think more Malaga and Mallorca. And I remember, for example, when Mac Dogs, that is a television drama from the United Kingdom, the representation of of the island, it was like not very good in that sense, but also, I don't know, it's like, you know, I don't know if you know the Mallorca Files. The Mallorca Files is a
Yeah, I saw there was one. Is that the one where there's murder? Is that the one where there's murders and things?
yeah, it's a crime drama about you know, a person from the United Kingdom and a person from Germany investigating crimes in Spain. Like we don't have a
your own police.
police force in Spain. So it's like I'm not against the program, but it's very, I think it's good as a crime drama is I think it's good, but it's this idea that we need people coming from there to investigate, crimes. But I have the idea that probably for if you take a look to the television, to the representation, particularly on drama, that is my area of specialization, is that you need sun, you need parties, and also drug use, and we have Idris Elba as DJ in Ibiza, and I think I see like an Ibiza imaginary.
Yeah, what was the one more recently? The one with the White Lines, no?
Yeah, for example, White Lines is a it's a case, because from my point of view, the part that took place in the United Kingdom was much more interesting than the part in Spain, and it was a very complex project for what I know. But this idea that probably if you are going to shoot in Spain, of course you prefer to shoot in a place that when you can go to the beach, and because probably that is more relatable to your experience when you are coming from Spain. I know that is not your case, Duncan, because I don't know if you have ever going to to the coast in Spain, because I see you like a very more urban British person, but probably for most of the British population, they associate the experience.
No, exactly. I mean it's always a shock to, I mean, you're right, I am more urban, although I do sometimes go to the beaches. But one of the things that's always I have great, I mean, you can tell, and this isn't just television, this is a whole series of cultural imaginaries. But I always have difficult when people come and visit me, I'll be in Bilbao in November and I'll have someone from the UK come and visit them, and convincing them that they can't come with their t-shirt and t-shirt and shorts wouldn't be a good idea is really difficult, because there's just this ingrained belief that Spain equals sun, and but it never rains, which, well, that would be a whole other conversation, but has some of its
no, but I understand, because as you know, I spent 1 year I was an Erasmus student at the University of Birmingham, and I always say that sunglasses was the most useless object that I took with me during my Erasmus year in the United Kingdom. So I understand the appeal of the sun coming from the United Kingdom, and of course I understand also that representation is more appealing.
So, I mean, I guess we're now going to move. I mean, we've been talking there about British representations of Spain, and earlier we were talking about, soft power and the BBC. Now we're kind of flipping that over somewhat. Over the course of the 1990s, Almodovar became something of a global ambassador for Spain. No Spanish television programs didn't really cross over into the Anglophone market in the same way. Why not? And does it make sense for Spanish television producers, to think about the UK market when the US one is so much bigger and with so many more Spanish speakers?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, sorry, it was a very convoluted question. I mean, I guess it's thinking about, this was two parts of it, because two questions. I'll split them into two. One is in the 1990s, Almodovar became a kind of global ambassador for Spanish cinema and television production. Cinema production and for Spanish audiovisual production. And I remember there was actually an advert of a Cervantes once which said, "Learn the language of Almodovar." But the same didn't really happen in the case of television for export in the 90s. Why didn't it happen? And then the follow-up question was if a Spanish producer's thinking about export, does it make them sense for them to think about the UK, or is the US just so much of a bigger market, but the UK is just a kind of footnote or something secondary?
Yeah, no, sorry, now I understand now. We need, there is an element that we need to consider when we are thinking about the development of television in Spain during the 90s, is that commercial channels came, they realized that probably fiction was a good thing, was a content able to connect with, with huge numbers.
Yeah.
And I was taking a look to data a few years ago, and in Spain we had some programs with 9 billion of viewers during the 90s. So really, some television, for example, Médico de Familia, Periodistas, and others, they were really popular. But it was
Sorry, 9 million. Did you?
Yeah. It sometimes some specific, some finales, for example, they were very popular. But it was at the cost of developing a model that the model was very oriented to Spanish television, and one particular thing that it probably became like a problem to sport programming for many years, not only to the United Kingdom, to every country, that they decided to include an additional commercial break.
Yeah.
So instead of producing 50-minute dramas or 60-minute dramas, that is the international standard for television drama, or 30-minute comedies, in some occasions we had episodes of 80 minutes and on even 90-minute episodes. So it was impossible to sport that that type of programming. And also, if you compare the visual quality, the production values of television being produced in Spain during the 80s, during 80s, from my point of view, was like a high point of a television drama in public service television, because they had really big budgets. So the production values of some particular programs was very similar to a blockbuster.
But sorry to interrupt, but that was, if my understanding's right, and correct me if I'm wrong, was because there was a combination of basically being very little competition because of the range of television channels.
No competition,
and also unlike the BBC, that was advertising. So the combination of that,
in some cases, and in some cases, the role of co-productions.
Yeah.
Because at the time we were having co-production with RAI in Italy, or with even the BBC, or some German channels. So it was a particular model that it was based on having big budgets, and also very ambitious ambitious storytelling. But that this programming was not that. It was about strictly the local market. And it was family dramas, and in some cases, the production values were really low. So it was not possible for those programs to travel, not only for the length of the episodes, but also for the production values of the television, the particular programs. So that was very difficult to overcome. And that started to change with the great recession, with the economic crisis, where there was like a big problem for the advertising marketplace in Spain, and some production companies, that it was the case of Bamboo Producciones, that they decided, in line with a German distributor, Beta Film, to edit the episodes to make shorter episodes, and instead of having 70-minute episodes, having shorter episodes and having more episodes. And that's the reason that one day Gran Hotel was bought by Sky Arts in the United Kingdom, and it premiered as the Spanish, Downton Abbey.
Well, I didn't know.
That, believe it or not, was an insult in Spain. I remember, reading a piece of review, from a good friend of mine, that is Alberto Rey, that he used the expression not in very good terms, because we had this idea that every time that something is interesting in Spain, it's because we copy, something from abroad. That's one of the problems that we have, that we don't have a lot of pride sometimes in Spain of the things that we do,
True.
you know, right.
Yeah.
So in this case, you know, what in Spain was a bad thing, you know, this series is a copy of Downton Abbey. It was, you know, the selling point in, you know, Sky Arts when they, you know, premiere, you know, the first season of Grand Hotel, which I think is kind of interesting and ironic at the same time. And of course, that was also the basis for the success of La Casa de Papel, because the La Casa de Papel, you know, the premiere in Netflix, it was not the same that we watched it here in Spain. It was more episodes, shorter episodes.
Yeah. Well,
so it was a problem of also the production model, and I don't think there is a big difference in the sense of the United Kingdom and the US, because during that period the only place or the it was not very easy for Spanish production companies to sell content. We were able to sell content to some Eastern Europe countries and also to Finland. For example, Los Serrano was huge. It was big success in, you know, in Finland. And that was the reason that Fran Perea, that was one of the stars of Los Serrano, was a, you know, best-selling, you know, recording artist in Finland. And for some years, you know, he offered more concerts in Finland than in Spain, because you know, Los Serrano was a huge success in Finland. But I see that like an anomaly and not like a, you know, like a.
There was also the case of, I mean, again, it's anecdotal as normally as well, but there was also Los Hombres de Paco in Russia, no? I think that Mario Casas became huge over there. I mean, both, I mean, we kind of talked about how this, you know, this trend, this sort of huge quantum change really, from Spanish TV being predominantly aimed at the domestic market to it becoming, Spanish television becoming a major player on the global scene. I mean, one of the things that was interesting about, you said La Casa de Papel, Money Heist, and also Vis-a-Vis, which were very successful in the UK. Neither of these series had actually been initially that popular in Spain. Am I right in thinking that? I mean, how do you explain that disparity or that difference in reception?
I think the first season of Vis-a-Vis was popular in Spain. I think the second one, that it was a bit dark, probably was not that popular, and that's the reason that it was cancelled. But I was kind of surprised when I realized, you know, that Lock Up was a success in the United Kingdom, because it was bought by, you know, Walter Presents, that is a video on demand service associated with Channel 4. And I had the experience of going to the first edition of the you know, British Film Institute Radio Times Festival, and one of the reasons was that you know, Vis-a-Vis was screened there. So I went because I knew one of the creators, Ivan Escobar, and it was, you know, to me interesting, you know, to go there. And it was one of the you know, smaller, you know, places in South Bank, you know, the free, you know,
Locations.
theater, but it was almost full house, and you know, people, they were paying, you know, £10 for a ticket. It was not a free, you know, it was not a free session. And that's the moment that I realized that some particular content being produced in Spain was able to travel abroad, and it was the case with Nordic drama and with Nordic noir. I think that probably the United Kingdom was like one of the gates to this new reality in televisual terms, in you know, to new, you know, marketplace, because it's very difficult for Spanish programming to be able to have some impact in the you know, in the English speaking world. And I probably is here, you know, this book that is 1001 series to watch before you die,
Right.
and there are some telenovelas from Latin America, but there is not a single, you know, a television drama from Spain or television comedy from Spain as part of the book. It's 1001, you know. It's a big number. So I think that probably, you know, the imaginary from the, you know, English speaking world is different. Probably you know, the family, you know, family comedy drama was not the right formula for this content to travel. And probably the thriller as it was the case of South Korea. We was discussing the success of the Squid Game before. Probably, the thriller is a good way to travel, and it was the case of Nordic noir. And in the case of Vis-a-Vis, that to me was the La Casa de Papel is a consequence of Vis-a-Vis, of the things that they did. First, they spend a lot of money in production values. Miguel Modeo, the cinematographer, is a genius. He was able to create a very distinct visual world, visual universe. The Vis-a-Vis is a female drama. It's a universe of women. To me, that's also interesting. We can consider that the program is, in this case, Vis-a-Vis is exploring a lot of topics, for example, related to violence against women, the privatization of some public, institutions. That is the case of the jail, system. We are lucky we don't have private jails in Spain, but also the series was discussing about the dangers of privatizing, some public services. I'm not sure that jail is a public service, but I think, just to be sure, but this idea of privatization of, some public services, and of course the representation of sex and the role of, I think it's a progressive, from my point of view. When I analyze the series, I see a lot of progressive topics in the narrative. So probably when thinking of Spain from abroad, probably Spain is not only sun and party, but it's also a country that in some specific moments they were able to advance some social issues. Particularly, I think we are a leading country in the fight against the gender violence and the violence against women. Spain was one of the first countries to legalize gay marriage. During, the Rodríguez Zapatero time as prime minister. So probably sometimes we are not as proud as we should be about Spain being leading some social issues, and sometimes our fiction our drama is representing that, and probably that is making some television series not only is about production values and the wonderful cinematography of Vis-a-Vis, but also some other values. And when I think about Elite, for example, that it was hugely popular in the United Kingdom, from what I know, I see the same thing in Elite, and I see the same in some particular programs from Spain that they are popular abroad, and particularly in the United Kingdom.
I hadn't thought about that, the progressive side. I mean, I had a very similar experience with Vis-a-Vis or Locked Up. I remember when it was, because I mean, for years, I've been putting on Spanish films, Spanish television series at home, well, at my parents' home, my dad's home, and he's never paid any much attention. And when I came back once, and the first time I saw it was he was, as you say, he used to watch Walter Presents, and he just had it on the television, and I recognized the actresses, and was just kind of, what are you watching? And as you say, it was a kind of crossover. It was the idea of, him not seeing this Spanish audiovisual production as something niche that he wouldn't be interested in, which he had done with the vast majority of things I'd put on, to seeing it as something that entered into his kind of audiovisual diet. And I mean, looking at this, flipping this back round, and we've maybe perhaps touched on this, but not with such an explicit question. What do you think in 2023 Spanish broadcasters and audiences look for in productions from the UK?
That's a good question. To me, it's interesting because even though you are of a particular age in Spain, you have the memory of watching a lot of British content, comedy and drama. For many years, we have like a disconnection with British television. For what I know, one of the reasons was that the BBC was kind of greedy, in the sense that it's very expensive to buy programming from the BBC. So for many years, you know, we had this connection with programming from the United Kingdom, and this, you know, this situation now probably is this idea that now we are watching more content from the United Kingdom is mostly because of Netflix.
Yeah.
And the type of programming that they are producing, of course, is the case of The Crown. That from the point of view of Spain, The Crown is very popular in Spain, I think, and there is a lot of, you know, discussions in the popular press about why we cannot produce our own, you know, The Crown all the time. But also, you know, the BBC programming, you know, from the United Kingdom, that in Spain is on Netflix, so it's not on Movistar or in the public, you know, public service television. And I'm thinking, for example, of the case of Bodyguard, that it was a huge success in the United Kingdom, but it was also popular in Spain. It was you know, when it premiered in, you know, Netflix. And to me, I had the idea that we don't really know about what is happening in the United Kingdom. We know the selection that you know, Netflix is making. Yeah. So to me, it's this idea that Netflix is becoming like a canon. So they are selecting content from different, you know, countries. So for what I know, this is also related to the complex relationship that the BBC now has with, you know, independent producers, because I have been a couple of times in the Edinburgh television festival, and I know that the relationship between the BBC and the independent producers, and they prefer to keep, you know, some rights to be able to sell, you know, the television series to Netflix and other, you know, international or transnational, you know, streamers, instead of, you know, BBC to commercialize, you know, the content, because they, you know, for them, you know, it's very expensive to buy content from the BBC, and sometimes they don't have, you know, the same reach, you know, when they are.
Is Peaky Blinders also Netflix? And
yeah, it's on Netflix. Yeah. Probably another, you know, I have also the idea that I May Destroy You was also very popular in Spain. In this case, it was on HBO, and probably, you know, this window of opportunity on some programming from the BBC being co-produced with HBO is making possible some content to reach, you know, Spain with the HBO, you know, video on demand service. So my idea is that we really like crime drama. We love crime drama, and the United Kingdom is giving us a lot of crime drama, and sometimes we also have, you know, some interest in programs that they are representing the female experience. And, you know, this type of programming that the you know, the BBC, you know, made with, you know, female creators. It was the case of Fleabag and I May Destroy You. They were very popular, and in my group of people, and also in my, you know, social media, you know, activity, you know, the second season of Fleabag was huge for my students, you know, was huge, but also I May Destroy You. So I think that this idea of, you know, the representation of the female experience with young creators with a really, you know, very distinct, you know, a creative vision, and, you know, the work that the BBC, you know, has made in the last decade, trying to you know, to find and nurture, you know, a female, you know, creativity, probably is making, you know, some of that programming very interesting from the you know, for you know, for some Spanish viewers, and also for the creative community. In the sense of this, you know, for example, Sally Wainwright is very influential for the Spanish creators, and Happy Valley, for example, that is another example. In this case, it's not a comedy, but it's also a television drama. In this case, a television drama created by a female creator about, you know, the female experience. was also very, popular and pretty influential on the, on the screenwriting community in Spain. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh no, I think you did. And I think what it really brought to the fore is that but I guess maybe we could talk about a transition from the early 80s, where we're thinking more about the influence of the UK on Spain. We're now thinking much more in terms of a dialogue. You know, it's a reciprocal thing, which I think you brought out very well, talking about the series. The why and the how the recent Spanish series have been so successful. I mean, I want to leave time to open things up to the people, the people listening, very patiently listening in to us thus far. And I just wanted to end with perhaps the most political or the most politicized question, which is taking advantage of your position within the Spanish state broadcaster, because you touched on this in your answer to the previous question. The rise of streaming channels such as Netflix has led some in the UK to question if everyone paying for the BBC license fee is anachronistic or justified. I mean, the situation in Spain isn't exactly the same because, Radio Televisión Española has traditionally gained so much of its income from advertising, but it's still nevertheless the recipient of public money. Radio Televisión Española has collaborated with Netflix, as you have personally. What's the justification, do you think, or is there a justification of a public broadcaster in 2023? And what room for useful collaboration is there with commercial broadcasters? I realize I've just asked a question, well, a series of questions, which basically could probably be 2 PhD theses, but as a kind of, as a sort of brief initial response to that from your institutional position, what would it be?
Yeah, I think public service television in Spain, I think, has a critical role, particularly now that we have a very polarized, situation, and it's difficult to find sometimes in Spain. This is not new, of course, but now, particularly now, is we are living all the time in streams.
Yeah.
And I think that public service television can serve as a middle ground, and this is not about drama, but it's about news.
Yeah.
But there was a Reuters Institute, a survey about the trust in different, media, and they also asked about their own political positions. You take a look to the data. The data was interesting in the sense that probably we don't have the, we have right-wing people, left-wing people. We have, the appeal of public service television is a bit wide in political terms. So we can be, like that middle ground between, polarized, positions, and that I think is good. Also, we need to consider, the relevance of standards. Of course, people, they can make mistakes, and particularly, in television, sometimes you don't have a lot of time to consider and to think, and sometimes mistakes are made. But I think, the standards in the, from the point of view of journalism of the public service television here is very big, and also the quality of international coverage. I'm really proud of the work that the Televisión Española journalists are doing, and also Radio Nacional, both radio and television in Ukraine during the situation in Ukraine, and now with the situation that is happening in the in the Middle East, because the quality of international coverage is very good, and there is no it's like black and white. It's like the standards, the quality. For example, the coronation of King Charles, it was a huge rating success for public service television in Spain, particularly with the quality of the commentary. And we have Ana Boch, that it was the the correspondent of Televisión Española in the United Kingdom for many years, and it was like a real expert, a real expert in the what's happening in the United Kingdom, in the United Kingdom, and the role of the the crown for the British society, and really viewers really appreciate that. So
So
I see a space. Yeah, I see a
maintaining
space.
standards, impartiality, and
Yeah, probably,
echo chambers.
from the point of view of drama, for example, we have, Los pacientes del Dr. García, that it was an adaptation of an Almudena Grandes novel, and it was a co-production between Netflix and Televisión Española. The budget was split between Netflix and Televisión Española. We are sharing some rights, and it was possible, to be able to create a content, because probably, the production model was a bit expensive for Netflix, and it was also a bit expensive for Televisión Española. So we were able to create a content with a Spanish television production company, with Spanish creators that is giving a value for international audiences, not only to the television drama itself, but also to the original novel and the Almudena Grandes, novels. So I think it's also, giving like an extra, value to, in this case, the Spanish literature all around the world, to be able to create.
So as an enabling force.
Yeah, I know the situation. Sometimes the relationship with international broadcast with international video on demand services is controversial, is difficult, because sometimes, the position of power that they have, is very big. But from a point of view, even though Netflix, they have people in Spain making decisions and selecting content, at the end of the day, it's an American company.
No.
So I'm not really sure that it's a good thing for, for Europeans, no matter if they are from the United Kingdom of France or of Spain, to let, American companies to control all the companies. So I remember, listening to a talk by Domingo Corral, who is the head of fiction of Movistar, that is a pay TV, platform in Spain, discussing, the role of, the sovereignty of Europe from the point of view of creativity. So I think that you consider, the role of broadcasters and how, they need to adapt to this, situation. Is good. We need to adapt. It's not the same now Spain and how we consume, content in Spain from 20 years ago. But be careful about giving these American companies all the control on the content, because if tomorrow they decide that they it's not worth the effort, that they don't really earn any money producing content in Europe, they are going to leave Europe, they are going to leave Spain, and they are going to concentrate on the American marketplace. So I see that we need to, vindicate, the role of, European companies and, public service broadcaster, and probably we need to find also ways to being able to produce more content, joining forces between the different public broadcasters. That, to me, that's an effort, and we are not able to get there yet, but probably in a few years we will be able to find more ways to collaborate between, different European, public broadcasters.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, I see we've already had one person put in, Patricia has already put in the chat about whether you could say a few words about Cuéntame Cómo Pasó, which was, as I'm sure most or everyone here will be aware, was a kind of ongoing soap opera style series about taking about family life, going through different periods of Spain through a dictatorship into a democracy. I don't know whether there was anything specific you wanted to ask about that, Patricia, or just a general comment about the series.
Was it a huge phenomena in Spain?
Yeah, it was. To me, Cuéntame Cómo Pasó is the most important, television drama ever produced in Spain. I think it's part of, some generations now, because it premiered in 2001, and probably considering, the problematic relationship that that we have in Spain with the past, even though I see the problematic things, but I think that it was, useful for Spanish society to have like that kind of mirror, and to see, represented on the screen in dramatize, some relevant, and some particular, moments in the history of in Spain. I'm really proud that in Televisión Española we greenlight one final season that is going to start, I think, today or tomorrow, not sure now. But we have, trust me, we are having a wonderful final season with 7 episodes, that each episode is going to focus on one specific characters. And I have to tell you that we are going to cry a lot. I was able to go to the to the premiere of the first episode of this final season in the San Sebastian film festival, and trust me that the full theater was crying at the end. And to me that was a testament of the it was a testament on the power of television, to be able to create so many emotions, and to be able to connect. And to me, television is about the connection, and I think that Cuéntame Cómo Pasó was able to connect even different generations of Spaniards. So to me, it's one of the biggest qualities of the program. So stay tuned for the final season of Cuéntame. Sorry for the advertising, but I'm really proud that we are having this final season of Cuéntame Cómo Pasó en Televisión Española.
And am I right in thinking the final season is of a year, but the season started to be?
Yes, the idea is 1 year one episode per year. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember my first thing, then I realized Cuéntame. I remember seeing the, because I'd always thought that what always struck me when I first started going to Spain in the 90s was how people wanted to be permanently in forward motion. People wanted modern flats, wanted modern hotel rooms. I remember once reading a review of on Booking, I don't know whether it's Booking.com or Last Minute, of a hotel, and somebody said something about los muebles muy bien, pero muy el estilo Cuéntame. That's a kind of, that's the sort of saying they were sort of period details. Pedro, I think, did you have a question you wanted to?
Yes, I would like to ask you about the theater on TV in Spain, and also I have read a paper written by you, an analysis how Shakespeare was made popular in Britain, but also in Spain through those theater pieces or adaptation of Shakespeare to the TV. What do you think about the present day of theater on TV? Because traditionally in Spain we have those programs like Studio Uno, I remember, where you can watch the classic and the pieces of Valle Inclán, for example, for the wide audience. And I don't think there are not so many at the moment. What do you think about is the situation of theater on TV?
Yeah, I think it's not a good situation. We don't have a lot of theater plays. Sometimes sometimes it's a problem with rights, particularly with contemporary theater. I think the good thing is that there are a lot of film adaptations of contemporary theater, Spanish contemporary theater, and that's the reason that they are not offering that content on television. And we don't have like a regular program for broadcasting television televisual adaptations of plays. And there are some, probably in Televisión Española we are trying to do something about that, and particularly to try to explore if we can offer on video on demand some contents that that is already online but can be more popular, if it's part of the of Radio Televisión Española video on demand platform, RTV Play. But on TV we don't have a lot of that, but we have the experience of having some playwrights producing for television now. And for example, Las Noches de Tefía was created by Miguel del Arco, and this is a point of contention between Duncan and me, because I was a big fan of Teatro Kamikaze and that type of theater, and I don't think Duncan is a fan. And But I see that some creators coming from contemporary theater, they are working now for television, or there is a relationship. Guillem Clua, for example, Pablo Remón, who was a television screenwriter before becoming, a very celebrated, playwright. Lucía Carballal, for example, that is one of the co-creators of one of the new Movistar television series, Galgos. So no theater plays, but
Crossover.
in professional terms.
There was
Particularly,
also the HBO Novi coming talking with Kamikaze.
Yeah.
They did a series of films for
Escenario
HBO,
Cero, yeah.
which were kind of an odd in between, and they weren't theatrical adaptations, sort of halfway house. They weren't theatrical adaptations, but neither were they for the screen, but neither were they just filmed versions of the plays. So.
Yeah, it was produced during the COVID period, and it was a bit more. I think it was Escenario Cero, a bit of an experiment. And I don't think it was very successful for HBO, and it was a bit of the production conditions for that adaptation. It was not very good because it was in the middle of the COVID situation, but it was not like an experience that has been replicated after Escenario Cero. So I see more relationship if you take a look to professionals, but not a lot of theater on TV nowadays. I'm afraid.
I'm aware I could carry on talking for hours. Actually carry on listening rather than talking more for hours. But I'm aware it's 7:30 and we're advertised till 7:30. Has anyone got a final question just to end with? Nope. Well, I think therefore we can be completely punctual then. Well, actually one minute late, but that's not bad in anyone's term.
Wonderful.
Again, just to thank the Cervantes for hosting this event, and Conchi for giving up her time, which is her diary is not. I think it would give me a heart attack to see what Conchi what Conchi does in a day is normally it would definitely be my week or my month. So I'm very grateful for giving this time to come and speak to us today, and I've certainly learned a lot. And I hope everyone else here has. I'm very grateful for everyone taking the time out on a Tuesday evening to listen to us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Concepción. Thank you, Duncan. It was a fabulous talk. And I would like to remind you that the next talk about cinema with the Hispanglia series will be on the 21st of November with our special guest will be Maria Delgado, with all about Spanish cinema and a bit more. So I hope to see you again on the 21st of November. Thank you again, Duncan and Concepción, and thank you to all of you. Thank you. Buenas noches.